I'm sick of being mortal, I'm about to be a savage. I see a lot of things that I want, I will have them. I got a new mindset that I just established. I'll march through the cold with the nails on the pavement. I'll shovel that coal just to get out the basement. My story will be told, helping others make changes. I'll be so bold, they will watch in amazement. Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time, you take it. Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time, you take it.
Hey Shubham, welcome everyone to Bulldog Math's Healthy Mind. How you doing tonight?
Hey Matt, I'm great, and we are connecting after a long time. So, how have you been?
Uh, I'd rather not talk about it if you don't mind. Uh, I will be alright. Let's just say that.
Yes. So, what are we going to talk about today? If you can give a brief.
Sure. So last time we were talking about Jung's concept of shadow integration, and I wanted to bring in this series the concept of wounded inner child. I also gave this presentation a subtitle which is, and why am I staying single? And maybe you should too. And I will answer that question a little bit later.
Yes, sure.
Let's get cracking, Joey. So, what we're going to talk about is the principles of Bulldog Math and the relationship with something called the law of attraction. And I will link it or map it to uh, Jungian concepts because that's my forte. And talking about psychoanalysis and certain things is also an outlet for me. So it's quite therapeutic and it's fully approved and encouraged by my therapist, which I have
Mhm.
two at the moment.
Mhm.
um, a background story that triggered my latest. It's not even the latest. It happened some time ago. But the
Yes.
biggest self reflection, some acknowledgements, because they're overdue, the concept of the shadow, and then a little bit of visualization and conversation with your shadow through my personal journey. What I actually mean by that is I'm going to share some intimate details from my journal, how
Mm-hmm.
I envisaged my shadow and what my shadow told me. And through that, what I'm hoping to achieve is I hope that it would help people on their path of self development, or in Jungian terms, in their path of individuation to start the journey.
Sure. I believe that it is going to be really interesting talk
I hope so.
and something really new to me as well. So, really excited to go into it.
Thank you. So, the principle, the law of attraction, I'm just going to read it out loud. The universe works on the principle that similar energies attract each other. Your dominant thoughts and beliefs, whether conscious or subconscious, create a vibration in a frequency that attracts circumstances, events, and people with a similar vibration. That's actually a concept I think from uh, oh my god, it starts with N and I've forgotten the name. I have a brain for a moment. Um, I've been having it quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And the idea is that as long as you still have a lot of trauma, as long as you are struggling inside, as long as you are fearful, anxious, or avoiding facing the truth, um, and full of worries and don't have faith, um, your thoughts, your anxiety, and everything else vibrates in a higher frequency, and the quantum field always tries to align,
Mm-hmm.
which basically means that with that higher frequency, you attract higher frequency or trouble.
Yes, that's so true. I just have one question. So, like, yes, we got the principle, but sometimes, like, there should be something happening that actually makes us believe in it, right? That it is the truth. So, how did you come to like believe in this law of attraction?
Did not believe it. I don't believe it because believe or belief is a concept that assumes that you trust something without sufficient evidence.
Okay,
I know
yes.
this to be true.
So, yes.
As arrogant as this may sound.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, um, if you recall my podcast with Olga,
Yes.
she's a spiritual coach and journey leader. I was fascinated by the concept that, albeit from a totally different discipline, from a totally different angle, she has the same concepts that I could one to one map with my understanding and knowledge of Jungian psychology. And then I read a longer article that wasn't really published during the time, but it got published in modern times. I found it with the help of AI, but instead of letting my agentic persona summarize it for me, I actually read it myself because I did not want it to have any hallucinations.
Yes.
And I wanted to grasp the concept myself. Back in the days, um, Carl Jung had a sit down with one of the most credited physicians, sorry, physics expert of the day, who was conducting quantum research.
Okay.
And after their really long discussion, they realized the same I just realized, that everything in deep Jungian analysis can be explained with quantum physics, superpositions, frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said in the previous episode that every road leads to Rome.
Yes.
Now, the reason I said I don't believe in it, I know it, is because I've seen it happen, and I had the displeasure of observing this through my life.
Mm-hmm.
I only understood it in hindsight. So until I at least semi healed some of my issues, namely my insecure attachment style, and I will touch on this during this episode, why it's not enough to do the pattern interrupt and uh, treat it with CBT. I'm going to tell it now. When you rewrite your neural pathways
Yes.
and uh, implement new behaviors, do a pattern interrupt, and learn to check yourself, to regulate your nervous system, to implement new reactions and new behaviors. That's great. You'll feel a relief. You'll be way more stable. You'll be able to hold boundaries. But
Mm-hmm.
as David Goggins would say, what you're doing is coating over the mind. To quote from one of my favorite David Goggins motivational videos, and I do apologize if I'm paraphrasing and not quoting it appropriately. He says something along those lines that, uh, why am I not getting better? Because there's a lot of shit in there you have not dealt with, brother. These
Yes.
people, they go to the gym, they get big, they get strong, and yet when an external adversity comes, they fold because all they do with this is create a physical manifestation of security. They're coating over the mind. What they don't do is the deep analytical work confronting the root cause of the problem.
Yes. The cause is there only.
And you're basically putting a plaster on a wound that is constantly bleeding because underneath it, the plumbing is, or the architecture is not right. And that is part of the reason why I put an acknowledgement into this presentation. My first psychotherapist was, although not Jungian, but she uh, is part of the school of psychoanalysis. And I'm I've always been a very lean, very result oriented person. I am,
Yes.
and quite pragmatic. So it was never enough for me to just go to psychotherapy and then, okay, I'm going to go better. I'm going to put everything in the trust of my, um, put all my trust and everything in my therapist. I always wanted to understand myself. I wanted to work myself. I did research. And this, by the way, is very typical of anyone with an anxious attachment style. We try to
Okay.
fix, we try to, and we go out of our ways to actually do something. Now,
Yes.
I do apologize, but to hell with it. I shouldn't be doing it in a podcast, but I'm soothing my anxiety with this. Um, the problem is that when in a different context, you're deep on the your deep issues underneath surface and you get triggered, or in my case, if it's a multi-layered problem with
Mm-hmm.
CPTSD, adult child of an alcoholic syndrome. So basically, the anxious attachment style is just a just a cherry on the top and the symptom of everything that was wrong underneath it.
Yes.
The problem I had with classical analysis is usually because of how they operate, because of the framework, because they don't analyze on the client, because once they have the answers and see things clearly, they um, try to let you discover it, but putting it on the client without giving the tools, or at least shedding some light on where to look and how, I still claim that this is unfair and not
Mm-hmm.
effective. Anyway, as a result of that, I temporarily got better because the surface level issues were resolved. So I left my therapist. But again, unless and until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's the quote from Carl Jung. What it means is that in hindsight, just to give you a practical example, um, now I see that when I thought out avoidant partners, subconsciously, what I was trying to do is I was trying to resolve a childhood trauma or adaptation, which was basically I needed to earn love. I grew up in a very emotionally chaotic environment. I'll get into it a little bit later. And the underlying subconscious thought, although I call it subconscious because I wasn't aware of it, I wasn't cognizant of the problem, was that if I recreate a similar situation, so if I find a partner, a woman who mimics certain behaviors from my childhood, then if I can earn her love and get her to soothe me, to cuddle me, to accept me, then I somehow prove to myself that the problem wasn't with me as a child. And I know that now that the problem wasn't with me, but through a totally different method. And the problem with this is the sequence works the other way around. So first you will have to heal, and then you no longer need to encounter the same things over and over again, wearing different faces.
Yes, I have also realized this recently. But yep, we need to first actually get over with, and then like whenever something similar happens, then it clicks us that yeah, this was happening to us for a long time, and we were kind of a victim to it.
Um, let's talk about this realization you had in our next coaching session.
Sure.
Okay, going on to Bulldog Math principle. It's easy to blame. It's easy to point fingers. Soothing, comforting. However, whilst you cannot change what happens to you or what your past is, you can absolutely change yourself. You can change how you react, and you can change your future. So
Yeah.
if you follow my code, if you like, then you don't blame. You don't give in to hate because politics and online media is full of it. Then you claim ownership and take responsibility for your life. You can observe this kind of hate projection or shadow projection in extreme feminism and then the counter reaction from the red pill movement. And I would like to ask our audience that if they agree with the Bulldog Math principle and ready to stand up for this hate projection, then add a comment. My pain is not for your gain, neither for your political or attraction or for your financial gain.
Well, people do try to like gain and take advantage of these kind of situations,
Look,
right?
it's classical shadow projection, right? And they do it on a collective level. Um, yes, there are narcissists, sycophants, um, a lot of nasty people out there, men and women alike. When
Mm-hmm.
you're hurt and your hurt feelings are validated by a group, feel relief. Once you feel the relief, you start bonding with that group because they validated your emotions. The evil thing they do is that they're generalized and they say, Pearl, for example, caters to a male audience that every modern woman is narcissistic and full of ego and yada yada. So they capitalize on that pain you have, project it to a larger group. It feels good because, okay, if they're all evil, then there's nothing wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. So
I feel
that's
validated, part of a group, and I can project my shadow. Brilliant.
mm-hmm.
Except that that's how the Second World War and the massacre started. It was a classic shadow projection on
Yes.
a societal level. And we can see the seeds of this right now. And as we are going to go through currency crises, we'll see even more of that, which is why it's absolutely imperative to say no to this, to look inside and try to be authentic instead.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that again. Right. So I wanted to contextualize some of this. Again, we're recording this episode in November, late November, but this happened several months ago. So if someone is trying to provide a timeline, maybe after the release of my book, you will get it, but not before that. I tried to create a quick review on the background of where I was. Um, I did sort of like a self check. I tend to manage my life the same way how I manage projects. I create weekly plannings. I do system checks, so to say, on a psychological level, and that was the result of the system check. So I had left my avoidant partner, which for anxious individuals is really difficult to do. I fixed my codependency. It was tested in a short-lived fling where I held on to my boundaries successfully at the cost of that relationship, and I was all right with it. My nervous system remained calm. So the pattern interrupt and the new learned behavior was rooted, and it was good enough.
Yes.
On the surface level, the anxious attachment style is gone. I wasn't looking for anyone or anything for external validation to soothe my nervous system. I already realized that all my previous relationship choices had followed the same pattern. That's what I was talking about. Consciously trying to resolve the childhood trauma with a present partner, which, in other words, if you get into an anxious avoidant trap, the way how I see it is that both sides are trying to outsource the self-parenting of their wounded inner child, and it's even funny if you look at it from the outside because it's ridiculous. Because they have their own shit to deal with, and their protective self in IFS terms, and their exile are in complete opposites. So what they think is going to protect that inner child and their own inner child, those behaviors are going to trigger the partner's wounded inner child and vice versa. So it's a constant, very,
Yes.
very intoxicating and hurtful behavior pattern for those kind of relationships.
Well, that's actually amazing that you were able to do it. But I'm just curious, right? That yeah, everyone has faced these kind of issues, right? But like, how can, let's say, I as someone can also go through that and fix those things, maybe go away from all this kind of scenarios, and like what steps are there to actually like fix this avoidant anxious kind of thing?
Previously, I would have answered that I've created sort of like a roadmap with a relatively easy to understand guide. Let's identify all the triggers. Let's identify our own uh, attachment or relationship style, the toxic behaviors, people pleasing, oversharing, things like that. Um, the protest behaviors. I'm going to dedicate a series um, of episodes to this, and then regularly check yourself, reframe it, um, practice a pattern interrupt, and embed a new pattern. Now, it is going to work on a surface level. If you're still in that relationship, before you start implementing this, I would advise giving a heads up to your partner, telling her or him that, hey, I'm trying to change, I'm working on myself. It's not going to be easy. Um, so if you notice a shift in the dynamic, because that's going to upset the partner, by the way, and
Yes.
more like the relationship dynamic, um, and it will make you temporarily unpredictable, which avoidance really hate.
It.
Yeah. Um, so at least it's fair to give them a heads up. I would say that the framework I created is basically a mixture from secure love, the bodies keep the score, attached, these books, um, the online publications of Dr. Mel Robbins and Esther Perel as well. She is a brilliant sexual psychologist, and Adam Lane Smith, who is an attachment specialist coach in the US, if you're
Okay.
familiar with that. But as I said before, this will create some sort of a relief where if you're the only one working on yourself and your partner is not working on him or herself, then it will lead to the inevitable conclusion of the relationship. The problem with it, or what I told you, is that you're trying to fix it from the top down. I would say it is still really useful because you will gain a little bit of self confidence, but on its own, it's insufficient. So
Yes.
the full framework that I've created from a psychological perspective uses something called IFS, or internal family systems, combined with attachment theory, uses tools of CBT and pattern interrupt, but also the framework underneath which the whole lens is checked is a Jungian analysis with shadow work, journaling, dream work, and then on the side, nutritional and lifestyle interventions to keep the hormonal balance and support the change. But I'm not going to be able to lay this all down or all out in one episode. So to give you a high level answer, that's what we are going to do during our coaching sessions. Um,
Sure.
I Getting back to where I was, I adopted a no blame look inside and evolved mindset, going through years of journals, identified a pattern or like a pattern at a time. So I identified a lot of triggers, patterns, and so on. And yeah, so what was the trigger for my biggest shadow confrontation? You might ask. I thought I was in a relatively stable, soothing place. By that time, I've been in therapy for almost a decade. I developed a full system. It's relatively okay. And then, um, and I was focusing on myself. And then an unexpected development of relationship illusion came, which I would say was a synchronicity. Now, the reason I say that is because neither of us were looking for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was absolutely impossible. Like, um, all of a sudden, it just happened. And at the right time, at the right, so a lot of things had to be aligned for it to come about. Um, I had also seen a lot of Jungian signs, but back then I had no clue what those signs were. Next time, or not next time, but eventually we are going to talk about synchronicities, signs, and dream work because my psyche or subconscious felt like, okay, now you're ready for the big change. Come on, big boy. I'm going to send you something called the impossible love because that was enough waiting. We need to push you through your dark night of the soul. um, the real trigger in all of this, because I can go through heartbreak and come out fine, and I've been able to do that even before that. Um, I wouldn't say unscathed, but that's for a middle-aged man, that's almost just business as usual. The
Yes.
reason it impacted me so much is because I saw my authentic self through the eyes of a fellow M. And it's very rare that two empaths get into any kind of intimate relationship, even for a brief period of time. But so far, how I experienced it completely aligns with what I read about it, which is because both of you read the other person
Mm-hmm.
and you both project either your shadow or your golden shadow to your partners because you still have not integrated your shadows, which is why you're in this empath or highly sensitive person, if you want to use the modern psychological term, um, the wounded healer archetype in Jungian analysis. And but what you see because of your hypervigilance and intuition, especially if you are like me, an INFJ-A, or if you're an INTJ uh, personality, and intuitively you read the emotional temperature, uh, the subtle changes in the psyche and behaviors, then what you see in the fellow empath's eyes is shocking to you because you see your own shadow, a call to stuff that you have suppressed. On top of that, she actually had shown attraction towards my authentic self, which I was busy hiding for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
but always secretly hoping that someone would get attracted
Actually,
to it and actually see it and actually love it. Avoidants have exactly the same concept, by the way. So deep down, they crave that someone sees them for who they really are beneath the mask.
yes. I just
Uh,
have a question. You just like said the golden shadow, right?
yes.
So what is it like, and how we can like it just made me
Go-
curious.
Golden shadow, I'm not going to get into details, but your golden shadow is basically an idealized part of your shadow. How you envision, if you're a man, you're anima, or if you're a woman, you're animus. So the opposing um, genders ideal. And let's say you are the anxious.
Okay.
If you're anxious, you deep down, because it's shadow material, but golden shadow, so it has a lot of value. Deep down, you really look up to independence, strength, decisiveness, and you see it in the partner because your
Mm-hmm.
shadow does the choosing. Now, the funny thing is, in an anxious avoidant trap, that for the avoidant, that's the fake persona, what you see. But you project your golden shadow to her, or
Him.
and she projects, because if you're the avoidant, then your golden shadow will be full of things like deep emotions, daring to feel deeply, daring to love from the heart, daring to be vulnerable. And an anxious partner will display those traits like a trophy.
Yes, I got it now.
That's the inverse mirror. Um,
Yes.
I find it really funny and also almost poetic. Um, anyway, getting back to my trigger, the loss of the illusion was painful, but made me see the part of my shadow I had been avoiding to confront all my life. She she called on to something inside of me that I've been busy shackling and chaining down as much as humanly possible. Um, sort of like the deepest part of my shadow. During the time I was off on holidays, I mean, when that short lived relationship came to its inevitable conclusion, I was in immense pain. I knew exactly what I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to stop hiding, sit with all the pain, and I let all the control go. I let my shadow take over. And I made a conscious contract with my shadow. I visualized it, I named it, I started journaling like crazy. And we made a binding contract from Jujutsu Kaisen. I will use a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen analogy, not just because my son and I love it, but also because it is full of Jungian symbolism.
Yes.
Um, the unexpected results of that made me freak out. I seriously thought that I'm going crazy and I'm completely losing the plot. I had unexplainable laughter, sorrow, crying, extreme anger, rage, contempt. Because in hindsight, what was happening is that I was vomiting up a lifetime of suppressed emotions. Now, at the age of 40 something back then. I was a young guy, eh? um, a lifetime of suppressed emotions.
That's a
Dude,
lot.
yeah. And imagine that you're doing shopping
Mm-hmm.
or having a shower, and it, the suppressed emotions surface, but without any explainable trigger violently. And that
Yes.
was not the only thing I could not explain by that time. I reached out to my therapist and shared my journals, and it was like, "Please, Petra, I'm going crazy, and I do apologize, Petra. I should have just trusted you," because she was like, "No, you're doing just fine. Just carry on. I trust you. You're not crazy. Trust me, I'm a psychiatrist. You're doing fine. Do exactly what you're doing. Plus, try to be a bit more compassionate with yourself. I know it hurts, but I know you. If anyone, you can get through this."
It all comes like a wave and just hit you so hard unexpectedly at like without any like you can say warnings. And
Um, wouldn't say that. It's just I'm a stubborn motherfucker, and there's a reason why I call myself Bulldog Math. I was full of pain, and I was crying and angry and full of contempt and hate. And I took a deep breath and I told myself, because obviously everything in me wanted to run away from this, distract myself, overwork myself, bury the whole thing the fuck down. But I told myself, if not now, when? I told myself, you've been able to condition yourself as a physically abused child to not
yes.
only uh, withstand physical pain and blunt force trauma, but at some point to explain to yourself that this gives me fuel, hit me, inflict pain on me, that's just going to give me even more rocket fuel. And that's how I was
Yes.
fighting in my 20s.
Yes.
And to confront even the deeper fears and the post-traumatic stress disorder of being abused, I went back to competing in different styles of full contact again and again and again until this extreme trauma response uh, just stopped. So I told myself, you could do this, so you can withstand emotional pain as well. You're a man, you're in your
Mm,
40s, face it. So I did. So I retreated to myself, only feeling stable in solitude and in nature. Um, what I've been going through is characterized in Christian psychology as the dark night of the soul. In Jungian terms, it's called nigredo, blackening, the
yes.
alchemical process of burning down all the falsehoods. The other thing which made me think that surely I'm not, I must have lost a plot, is, and it's difficult to explain, but when I was in that mindset, I just felt other people's energy resonance with a sharper sense than my German Shepherd dog. My son was with me, so, and because it was craving nature, and Jimbo loved it, Marky wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
with his dad. We did a lot of hikes all over the country. And sometimes I stopped, looked up, held my hand up, ordered Jimbo to stop and Mark to stop. And I was like, bloody humans are approaching from that direction. And then, oh, because the other thing is that I just absolutely felt irritated by every single human around me. It took me two
Yes.
days to get used to my own son, and that should tell you a lot. So I really thought that I was losing the plot. For some reason, dogs and animals, they did not bother me. As a matter of fact, I felt this hatred and contempt coming down substantially in the presence of especially dogs. And Jimbo was absolutely fine with me. He,
Yes.
if anything, he got a little bit closer. And at first, even my son was like, "Oh, come on, Dad." Even Jimbo doesn't sense anything. Then I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and I was like, "Count to 7. By the time you're finished, they will show up there." Then I did the same trick the fourth time. It freaked my son out. So, uh, but when you experience this, you journal it. There's someone there who observes it. And I was still having some sort of conscious thought, but the animal instincts in my German Shepherd dog surely are much sharper than mine. Yet I'm outperforming him in this regard substantially. What the hell is going on?
'Cause you
Um,
got more sensitive to it, right?
Modern psychology describes it, by the way, as improved. As I said, I'm an INFJ, a personality type, and an empath, or in modern psychology called technical terms, hypersensitive person with hypervigilance because of the abusive childhood, which basically means that I have very high intuition combined with analytical skills, and my brain development works a little bit different because those of us who grew up in that kind of environment develop a condition that is basically a safety mechanism, that the part of the brain that is responsible for mirroring emotions and then decoding what's going on is overdeveloped. It had to, because I had to constantly scan the horizon. Am I safe? Am I not safe? Hypervigilance. But this encounter dialed it up to a level, right? I also developed an enhanced sense of smell, touch, and hearing, temporarily, I might add. Uh, I was questioning my entire life. And at some point after the fifth or sixth day, I basically said, only the truth matters, nothing else.
Yes.
Um, and to make it interesting, I'm gonna go through this slide about the conclusions and realizations, and then we are going to call it a night for tonight, if you don't mind,
Sure.
because I have other physiological needs, and this has been going on for 48 minutes. Um, I drank
Yes.
a bit too much. Not alcohol, I don't drink alcohol, but you get the idea.
Yes.
So, acknowledgement. Virginia, you were right. There's no replacement for deep psychoanalysis. That says, uh, was it not for the framework I've developed, CBT adoption, checking myself, IFS, and everything else, I would not have been strong enough to face this. But nevertheless, I owe you an apology. Um, Petra, I owe you an apology too. You trusted me, told me to just carry on. You had more faith in me than I had back in the days, but I panicked, so I reached out to a counseling helpline. A, I didn't need it. B, it wasn't successful to say the least. It was a complete waste of £250. And I got royally pissed because that lovely counselor did not bother to check my history, think anything about my journal. Um, Even the immediate triggers she completely ignored. And she went like, you live a bit too in your analytical self, which is also a protector in my IFS family, the architect, that likes to
Mhm.
analyze and predict everything. And it was like, yeah, I use that too. Had you checked my personality type, but why bother? I, but at the same time, had you checked my actual journals or anything I have written to you prior to our um, one and only session, then you would have known that for the first time ever in my life, I gave in to all those fucking emotions and I was vomiting up a lifetime of suppressed emotions. So your insistence of me reliving a lot of shit and re-triggering me, I mean, are you out of your goddamn mind? But anyway, so I do apologize, Petra. I should have listened to you. That's the long and short of it. Um, Self check after my previous relationship. I was arrogant, so I thought that, no, I'm fine. I had my boundaries that led to the conclusion of my previous relationship. It was after me leaving my avoidant partner. I didn't blame myself. I didn't think I was unlovable or unworthy. It didn't. I had certain boundaries because I actually prioritized my life choices over the relationship, and that's fine. I no longer had that inner critical, toxic inner voice because I started self parenting. So the narcissistic interjects toxic inner voice, like toxic um, interjection or inner critic in IFS terms was non existent. I had no anxiety. Both my long term therapist and I thought I was okay. I just decided to focus on my goals, my physical recovery, instead of trying to find a partner because it takes dedication, patience. And with my current lifestyle, I couldn't even offer that kind of attention. But all that would tell you that I thought I was stable. I wasn't looking for a relationship, yet it happened fucking anyway, which is why I said it was so unexpected.
Mhm. Yes.
Through previous self parenting, the discipline, the achievements, all the external validation, going through pain, I learned to at least respect myself and made my inner child feel safe. But a child not only has to feel safe, a child needs three things to start a healthy emotional development. It needs to be it needs to feel safe both emotionally and physically. It needs to feel like being heard, so his or her emotions validated and listened to, even though not necessarily um, encouraged. And the child needs to feel loved. And I was able to give my inner child safety, but I couldn't love myself. Right. You were about to ask a question, and I'm going to sober
Yes.
myself in the meantime. I do apologize. I know I shouldn't be doing that. And it's kind of
So I just wanted to ask that a lot of time actually people doesn't realize that they have a inner wounded child, right? So
that's
how like it can go unnoticed, there can be a lot of things that people might miss, they don't notice, right? So how we can actually like start to notice it, and if someone notices their inner child, right? So wounded inner child, what should he do, or like what should people start with to make things better for themselves?
I would love to answer this question. I will answer this question, but um, the concept of self-parenting and inner child is again probably a good 5, 6 episodes material. In my case, in something, and I need to introduce this concept as well, internal family systems, which is a therapeutic approach. If you ask me, it's a modern interpretation of Jung's analysis. So it makes it a bit less symbolic and spiritual and whatever, so um, people can accept it. Um, when you um, what I do, but that's not the only answer, but this is what I can give you in 5 or 10 minutes. You identify that, okay, in my childhood, there was a lot of crap. So I
Mm-hmm.
have a wounded inner child. IFS, for people with similar things I've gone through, identifies that inner child as the exile. Its feelings were never validated. Um, it has never felt safe and it never felt loved. Now, you can't change the past. So, but you can reparent that part of you as an adult
Mm-hmm.
using different techniques. Now, I combine all this with somatic awareness and somatic anchoring, somatic grounding, which is, to give you a practical example, earlier today I was triggered and I started feeling a lot of anxiety. I had shortness of breath. I ran out of my Ventolin. I needed to use a stronger um, asthma inhaler that is steroid based. Then I was like, what the fuck is going on? Um, so instead of going to the next thing I was about to do, I laid down on the couch, closed my eyes, and I was like, okay, with a bit of somatic awareness, where do I feel it? Feel it in my plexus solaris or solar plexus, that anxiety and stress, and I feel it spreading to my chest. Took a deep breath. I did a little bit of breath work, which was extremely difficult. So, which is why I first needed to cater the asthma, the physical symptom. And I
Mm-hmm.
put one hand on my belly, one hand on my chest, closed my eyes, and I started just stroking myself really gently. Then I imagined that this is the scared inner child in me or the exile. And I started saying it out loud that I know you are afraid. I know you are hurt. You have every right to be. It's fine. But we are here now at my home. It is safe. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy is here. Now I'm big and I'm strong and I will protect you. It's
Yes.
okay. On top of that, people might think that I'm weak and early or whatever. I got a big pillow. I cuddled it to physically feel the cuddling sensation, and I started to rock myself back and forth, which reminds us of a
Uh,
baby that is being
yes.
rocked by their mom, and eventually it lowered the temperature. I also did three things after that. Started sweating. I had heat waves, and I went to the kitchen, uh, did a nutritional intervention. Blueberries, pomegranates, grapes, watermelon, big boatload of honey, smashed it together, and I ate it all. Because all that somatic sensation and anxiety burns carbohydrates. So the trigger, the psychosomatic trigger in my case, created a hypoglycemic state on top of all of that. So by eating a boatload of fruit and honey at the same time, I very quickly replenished my glycogen, especially liver glycogen, which is fructose um, stores. Um, all this provided loads of antioxidants. And I also ate a banana. Now, if you remember the neurotransmitter related episodes, this all
Yes.
created a little bit of serotonin secretion, enabled a bit of oxytocin secretion, a bit of dopamine secretion. So my mood and stability started rising up
Good.
almost as if I was medicating myself, which, if you think about it, I did, but not by drugs, but by
Yes.
food, real food. Then I drank uh, electrolytes with water and a chamomile ginger tea, um, which has a soothing, calming
Ye-
effect. Um, and I also took some L-thyrazine, which also calms you down. It's a natural dietary supplement.
Okay.
But basically, in general, what you can do is you can. I have these kind of. I have this kind of meetings or scheduled tasks in my calendar uh, to do a check-in, journal entry, review of the day, stretching, talking to my inner child, and somatic grounding. I still do a little bit of shadow work, but only just checking because uh, I think I'm pretty far ahead on my shadow integration. So I no
Mhm.
longer need to do that. But inner child work and self parenting, I still need to do a lot because I'm still triggered.
Yes.
Um, do you want to stop here or do you want to carry on? Like,
Sure, we can actually wrap this up here. We are already like over 1 hour mark. So
yeah.
sure.
Okay. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. In the next one, we will continue talking about the concept of shadow and the inner child, and it will hopefully answer some of your questions. And
Yes.
I will also introduce self parenting and a very brief concept of internal family systems so that you sort of have at least a very high level insight to my own framework where I use Jungian analysis and the internal family system with somatic interventions as well as nutritional interventions and dietary supplements. If you like the
Sure.
video, please like, share, and subscribe. Uh, put it on your headsets. Let it play in the background. Um, we need to reach another 2,800 watch hours at the very least before YouTube or ABC would actually start advertising it. So by doing that, you are helping me and you're probably helping a lot of people who
Hmm.
needs help. So please do that. Thanks a
Great.
lot.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Matt. And yep,
See you later.
see you next time.
See you next time.